raise question or speak. So with that, I'm just going to go fast, sort of a slide that is basically looking at a bit of a recap in terms of what and why global partnership monitoring. And first of all, actually, what is a global partnership monitoring? I think quite a number of people are aware of what the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation it has come from the a previous sort of a global conversation around aid effectiveness, now shifted to effective development cooperation. But with the 2030 agenda, that is actually setting and even stepping the gear towards to much more inclusive and much more a sort of a diverse cooperation partners that are at the country level in order to really make sure that the development impacts, sustainable development impacts are achieved in a way that we will have to look at the way of working together differently, and then the way that the cooperation is delivered is also much more coherently in support of the national priorities. So it's essentially is about the whole of society approach that are actually also enshrining in the global partnership monitoring, global partnership for effective development cooperation. That is actually is a multi-stakeholder platform that is focusing at the country level implementation of development impacts and effective development cooperation. And making sure that the effectiveness of development efforts by all actors deliver in a way that is making the deliverable of the lasting results at a country level. So again, it is a country-led, driven to support working together better and mobilizing, and actually much more so in terms of the effective utilization of all types of partners, drawing on much more diverse partners that are present at the country level. So I will then go quickly in terms of why monitor. The global partnership advancing the effectiveness of development cooperation. We do this through, first of all, monitoring and tracking progress in terms of providing and generating the data around effective development cooperations, and also using the evidence and efforts that are happening at the country level, but also by stakeholders at all levels in order to spark the dialogue and also exchange lessons learned and some of the practice that are happening at the development cooperations arena, and then focusing then to making sure that there is some kind of a policy behavior change that are happening at the to make the development cooperation much more effective. So making development cooperations, that's actually require cultural behavior change, but also the policy institutional change. And one of the flagship is generating evidence and data and making sure that there's a track of the progress that is being made through the set of indicators. Now I'm gonna go very quickly to the what is actually is the monitoring of effective development cooperation that is covered. Now, the progress is being tracked along the effective development cooperation principles that are country ownership, focusing on results, inclusive partnership, transparency, and mutual accountability. And in a way, the indicators that we will be discussing actually in the tomorrow's sessions, much more in depth about some of the what this each indicator actually measures and how it is being measured, the measurement approach and how it's going to happen at the country level. But I'm just going to go very, very quickly in terms of what is the country ownership, the ways in which the monitoring actually track. So in terms of the country ownership, it's really about enhancing delivery of cooperation in support of the National Sustainable Development Agenda. And in a way, equipping countries and partners to actually deliver and strengthen the capacities in order to meet the ambitious Agenda of 2030 agenda. Now, in terms of focusing on the results, it's about ensuring alignment, the strategic alignment, and also impact, focusing around country national development results. And inclusive partnership is really looking at the ways in which the development partners come together and support the quality of the development partnership at the country level. Now, transparency and mutual accountability is really measuring the ways in which that the development cooperation delivery is happening in a way that is transparent, and then also enhancing the accountability of each of the partners to national development agenda at the country level. So I will go very, very quickly in terms of several of the key features of the global partnership country-led monitoring process. So as I said, the global partnership is a multi-stakeholder platform that is more or less a coalition of partners and countries to advance the effective development cooperation, ensuring that there is a development impact, long-lasting results to ensure the leaving no one behind. Now, in a sense that the participation in the global partnership monitoring is voluntary for countries and the stakeholders. And if they see the elements that are being monitored and generating data, and also the inclusive dialogue that happens around the results is relevant and actually is useful in the existing sort of a country mechanisms for making sure that the development impacts, then I think that quite a number of countries have seen the usefulness, and then therefore they voluntarily actually engaging in this country-led monitoring process. Now, the process is led by partner countries, meaning that the national coordinators are typically appointed by a ministry within a ministry that are in charge of development cooperation or development partners, depending on the country institutional context that may exist. Now, the country-led monitoring process is also meaning the data collection should be and encouraged to be grounded in countries' existing systems and mechanisms. What does that mean is the data to be used to track the progress can be embedded in the informations that are reported already through existing national development tracking systems, for example, aid information management systems, or if it's relevant, the public financial management systems or any kind of system that might exist at the country level in tracking informations and data around development efforts by stakeholders. It is also encouraged that the data collections and the process grounded in existing mechanisms, meaning that some of the dialogues and engagement and the conversations, consultation, validation might actually happen through the existing national mechanisms around development planning processes, such as annual policy dialogue, or if it's a relevant SDG sort of mechanisms that might exist at the country level or being established to track the progress around the sustainable development agenda. And in some cases, the existing development partner coordination groups or the development partners groups might actually provide the much more sort of strengthened and coordinated engagement of development partners into the process. Now, it is multi-stakeholder engagement, and we are encouraging countries to be facilitating inclusive consultations around results, but also the reporting about some of the progress with the relevant stakeholders such as civil society organizations, private sectors, and also the parliaments, trade unions, and then others. So that's more or less in terms of the key feature of the country-led monitoring process. That is a hallmark of the global partnership, which is country-led, which is multi-stakeholder grounded, and through that process leading to a much more enhanced ways of working together and enhanced way of delivering cooperations in a way that supports the national capacity to be able to achieve the sustainable development goal. Now, just very quickly in terms of what this sort of a monitoring and the results can strategically be used by participating countries and development partners, including the civil society organizations and others. First of all, the data and a storyline or evidence that are generated from the country-led monitoring process of the global partnership is informing the reporting on 3 SDGs indicators currently. One of them is the SDG indicator that looks at the gender equalities and women's empowerment. And the 2 of the SDG 17 indicators are also using the data and the evidence and generated from the country-led monitoring process. In terms of the SDG 17 indicators, that is a 17.15 that looks at the policy space for countries to be setting their own development agenda. And then the 17.16, which is the progress being made through multi-stakeholder development effectiveness monitoring process, is some of those indicators that are already directly informing from the data generated from the country-led monitoring process. Now, the monitoring process itself is also can be used to address the transparency gaps that might exist at the country as well as global level. From the previous experience that we have heard from countries that are participating in the monitoring was that actually data reported through the monitoring process at the country level provided some of the evidence that there are some information gap exists in terms of the operations, in terms of the delivery of development cooperations at the country level. Some of the countries are also using the results and the engagement itself to be strengthening the development cooperation coordination or dialogue mechanisms by actually using the data and the evidence as an evidence-based dialogue to strengthen the ways in which the cooperation dialogue happens at the country level. And some of the countries are also using the results to inform the review and the strengthening of existing or a new development cooperation strategy or policies in a way that are within, that are fit for or actually reflecting some of the progress and challenges that they see in making development cooperation much more effective in order to achieve the SDGs. Going sort of like clockwise in a way that the process itself and some of the indicators that are being monitored through the country-led monitoring process has also provided an entry point and opportunity to strengthen the dialogue in collaboration with civil society organizations, as well as strengthening the platform and engagement with the private sector, identifying the some of the common sort of share visions to which the private sector can also contribute to sustainable development agenda. And overall, the results and the role, the results and the data had also enhanced the ways in which the partners strengthen the efficiency and effectiveness of the delivery for development cooperation, and also looking at the ways in which the other financing from the other types of cooperations and the financing partners can actually achieve or contribute to the sustainable development agenda at the country level. So overall, some of the results and the process itself have been utilized to be able to support the country-led mechanisms and coordinations and any of the process that might happen in strengthening the whole of society approach, the whole of government approach to meet the ambitious sustainable development agenda. Now, as I said, in terms of the enhancing, the key feature of the global partnership monitoring is the multi-stakeholder engagement. And in the past, 2016 as well as 2014 monitoring process, some of the lessons learned that have come and the challenges posed by national coordinators was the need for much more strengthened engagement of variety of development cooperation providers, as well as the stakeholders at the country level to report and to also engage in discussions and dialogue. And in order to basically join up the efforts to make sure that everybody work differently and smartly to support the Sustainable Development Agenda. So the guide that we have produced has also put a specific sort of roles or encouraged roles or suggested roles for different partners at the country level in monitoring. But I just want to also highlight in terms of the national government, the national coordinator plays a major role in leading and facilitating the monitoring, but we also encourage, given the whole of society, the whole of government, and then the fact that Sustainable Development Agenda is much more integrated and much more complex, we encourage as much as possible for the national coordinators to also bring relevant government entities in the monitoring process to be able to strengthen the monitoring process itself, as well as the data and engagement to join up the efforts to support the development cooperation effectiveness. And then also encouraging the national coordinators to liaise with the existing mechanisms that happens or that exist with the development partners, as well as civil society organizations or private sector, to be able to enhance their cooperations and engagement in the development monitoring process of the effective development cooperation. So I will just go very quickly in terms of the broader timeline, and Alejandro will then take it over in terms of the specific steps and what are the specific roles that we encourage or suggest, and also some of the tools and guides that might be available from the OECD-UNDP Joint Support Team. Now, in terms of the timeline, as I said, because of the evidence and data to be informing some of the global progress process, such as the SDG reporting, but also the IATF, the Interagency Task Force report on the financing for development, as well as the 2019 UN High-Level Political Forum. The timeline is worked out in a way that the data are processed and aggregated and analyzed to be able to also produce some of the result products that can be used by countries in the voluntary national review, if countries are actually undertaken voluntary national review for 2019, but also to continue informing the country-led process for the SDG reporting, as well as the other country processes. And also in a way that the data generated in storylines produced from the country-led monitoring process also feeding timely into the SDG reporting and the FFD fora, as well as the 2019 Global Partnerships Senior Level meeting that will happen in July 2019. So this is more or less in terms of the larger sort of a bigger picture in terms of the monitoring round for 2018. As I said, the the monitoring guide for the Global Partnership Monitoring has been produced and had been shared, I believe, earlier today or last night. So you have information that are available to kickstart the process at the country level in terms of the country-led monitoring process. So over now to Alejandro to go through each of the steps more in depth.
Thank you, Yuko, and welcome everybody. Before I start, I wanted just to say a word about why we are dedicating more time in this monitoring round vis-a-vis the previous monitoring rounds to discussing the process. Many of you have participated in the 2016 monitoring round, and it was very interesting to listen to you after carrying out the exercise in your countries about the lessons learned, how to sequence the process in a way that was more efficient, what were the difficulties in liaising with your partners to get the data from them, to what to do with the results when they came out, etc. And we thought that maybe as part of this series of webinars, this could be the first interesting topic to cover, how to manage this country-led monitoring process in a way that really is useful for you as a country in moving your agenda and in strengthening the role of your ministry or your agency in managing development cooperation and coordinating all your partners. In this regard, so we are presenting this overall timeline. Of course, it's an indicative timeline, so depending on the moment in which you start, you may adjust time from the different phases a little bit to make it work for your country and the country context and timing. But it's very important if the process can be finalized by the end of the year. So by the beginning of next year, your government can actually use this information in all those global processes of reporting to the SDGs and participating in the Financing for Development Forum and coming to the next high-level political forum in New York with evidence of not just what the sustainable development goals are in your country, but if the means and the support you need from your partners is there in the ways that you require. So without further ado, let me start by where we stand now. So if I can pass the slide. Yes. So since May, even earlier than that, and particularly in June and in this month, we have been talking to you and liaising with you and your colleagues, trying to see how this process could help support some of the initiatives that you are currently carrying out in your ministries and agencies. And we have shared with many of you already an official invitation letter signed by the co-chairs of the Global Partnership, the ministers of Germany, Bangladesh, and Uganda, inviting your authorities to participate in this process. And many of you also have covered the second point, which is appointing a national coordinator to lead this monitoring exercise. In some of other cases, this is still to be determined, but as soon as there is some confirmation of participation and who is the national coordinator that can lead this exercise, or who can be also part of the team within the ministry or the agency. So let us know in this email address that we present there, monitoring@effectivecooperation.org. To support this initial engagement, we have, besides liaising with you by calls, webinar, Skype, and emails, we have also shared with you a short brochure, which appears in the right side of the slide, that contains a little bit of the basics of how we think this process can benefit your country, what it entails, and that can serve as an instrument to go to your authorities and in a very short way present what is the point of doing this and how can it benefit the country. So we hope that's helpful, and we also welcome feedback on this. This document is available in English, French, Spanish, and Arabic. And as some colleague mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will make sure that all the important documents, trainings, materials, videos, etc., are all in multiple languages, so they can be used at country level, and it can help you understand better the process. So what's next in the next 2 months before September, ideally? So for governments that participate in this process and national coordinators, the first task is to familiarize themselves with the monitoring framework and process. We're going to be offering training through the next weeks, self-paced training, so you can take it at any time you want to, or you have a specific interest in some areas, you can look at it, some indicators, etc., in short videos that can be quickly seen, watching a couple of minutes. But also, of course, the guide was very appreciated last time as a systematic, comprehensive way to really learn about this process. That we hope is still the case. We try to improve it to make it more user-friendly. You will see as you revise it that it is less technical and it's more like step by step how you do things, how you calculate the different parts, and particularly how do you go about reporting or bringing input from other partners if needed to report on the different indicators. The second thing that maybe governments may want to start doing in July and August is to reach out to the development partners. When you receive the the guide and also the data reporting tools, you'll see that the first thing that you're going to be asked is to list your development partners. This is a very good practice, because once you have a sense of what is the sample partners that you want to engage in this monitoring process, and that could include bilateral and multilateral agencies, the different global funds there like Gavi and the Global Environmental Facility, etc. You can think also on emerging donors that are increasingly more important in many countries. And you can also think on other stakeholders that also provide development cooperation. Maybe it's not classified as official development assistance, but it's non-concessional lending loans. But that's also part of the commitments that they have made to deliver those development finance flows in ways that are aligned with the effectiveness principles. So you can also report that information in this monitoring round. So when you have the list of development partners, donors that you want to engage, you can bring them, you can reach out to them. And to support that reaching out to them, we have also made available in our website this brochure for development partners that explains to them what is in for them in participating in this process. It's always very difficult to bring them in, right? So it's a way to quickly see that they have committed to a series of commitments to how to deliver more effectively and supporting partner countries. And what specifically is going to be requested from them, what is the role, etc. So to save you the time to explain all these things, the brochure explains this to them in a very systematic way. What are they doing in parallel in July and August? Our development partners is at headquarters level in their capitals, they are assigning a focal point to support this process. This was a request from partner countries last time, and it's very important that they assign a focal point at headquarters level that then can reach out to the different embassies or country offices and tell them, you know, the government of these countries participating in this process, so you need to be engaged and supportive and responsive to the request for information or data or support from this partner country. It's important that not just you as government and national coordinator are trying to reach out and engage these partners, but that they understand that even their capitals at headquarters level, they are also committed to participate in this process. So they need to be proactive and not create any further delay through the process. No? So that's something that we are also trying to do in parallel to support you as you start in this process of sensitization and awareness raising in the country. The last thing you see in the slide is that as we get this list of donor HQ focal points, we will make it available as well, because sometimes you have partners that they don't have presence in the country, like an embassy or a country office, but they provide you support. And typical example is the global funds, no, like Gavi on vaccinations, etc. They don't really have country presence, but they have a focal point in headquarters that can provide you the data you need regarding the program in your country. So we'll provide this list. So when you have difficulties to identify who you should engage for that partner, you can go there and contact the focal point at headquarters. They will inform you about who is the right person to provide the data. So moving on, what happens after the July-August period? From that moment to October is basically the moment in which there is a data collection process at country level. For you as national coordinator, a good practice is not necessary but important or useful based on the experiences of last time is having some kind of kickoff meeting. It can be more or less formal, it can be more like a meeting, it can be more like a workshop. It depends on the circumstances, the support you have to carry out this exercise, etc. But the point is that it can be an opportunity to say, you know, we are starting this monitoring process as a government in our country, and we want you to be involved and informed about this. If you feel that template presentations from our side to support you in presenting the overall picture of this monitoring framework can be useful, we can certainly provide this kind of template presentations to support that first kickoff meeting. The second step to be very efficient is to, before we start with any other indicators, maybe sharing the request for information and data from your partner development partners, because they will take some time to collect that data and put it together back to you. So that maybe is a good practice to send this early on, So on those 4 indicators, I require some development partner information on the predictability, on the use of your country systems to deliver cooperation, on how well they are aligned to your national priorities and results. So on those indicators, it's good practice to start early on to share this request for information on data. In the meantime, as you wait for the response from your development partners, you can start reporting or answering the questions for the 7 indicators that require some kind of input or response from the government. Some of them are like, the government is the main source of information for those indicators, but as per request of you in the last monitoring round, we are also allowing for you as from the country level perspective to complement a few indicators that we will see tomorrow in the next session, tomorrow, that so far have been collected, for example, from global sources like the level of anti-aid or the levels of transparency of the different development partners regarding the development cooperation. In the past, that was just a global assessment, but this time around, we are providing you in the data reporting tool that we will share with you the specific disaggregated data for your country, so you can comment on the different behaviors of your different development partners and flag what are the issues going forward that you would like to see solved in the country. And finally, there are a couple of indicators that require a particular input from other actors, domestic actors like the private sector and civil society. And while from our side, from civil society and private sector networks, we are collecting or trying to collect proposals of good candidates that could play the role of focal point for those actors in your country. It's of course the decision of the national coordinator who to engage in these processes. As my colleague Yuko was mentioning, it's very good practice to rely on existing platforms that you may have of engagement with civil society organizations or with the private sector representatives. On the side of the development partners and other actors, of course, this, as I was mentioning, the role in this data collection process, besides joining you through the discussions, is to provide you the data that you need for a few indicators in a timely manner and comprehensive way, and in engaging the consultations on these multi-stakeholder dialogues as requested by the government when the time comes at country level. So what tools do you have to support, or we provide you to support you in this process? First, the guidance that you probably received this morning, that it has an edition for national coordinators that it focuses on what you need to know. It's less technical than the past, and it's more focused on the practicalities of how to do it. There will be a shorter version of this guide that can be used for like your political, more senior authorities that didn't want to receive an 80-page document, but maybe it's just the 15 pages that are relevant for them to know from a political level perspective what this process is about. Whereas this monitoring guide contains all the technical discussions on the different indicators in the back of the publication. We also are preparing a mini guide for your development partners, and that's to save you the time and effort of having to explain to them what the indicators are, how do they have to report on the indicators. That's something you can share with them when you share with them the tool that we will provide for you to collect data from them, which is an Excel file, which is already self-explanatory. I will explain in a minute what it contains. And in addition to that, there is a checklist, which is a one-pager that tells you on a single page what are the different steps that the monitoring process at country level implies, and how can you go one by one through them in a systematic way. That will be also available in our website in the next hours. Finally, there is a dimension that is not just giving you the guidance, but helping you understand the information and the technical details if needed. So we are preparing a different, like a program, like an online course, which contains individual videos and explanations on the different indicators. So when you are in the process of collecting this data or understanding this indicator, in that moment you can go to the specific indicator and watch a quick explanation of the indicator. The text will be also available in text format in case your connectivity is difficult or low, so you can also read what is being said in the video. And also, as equally important, as you may have received already an invitation, we are organizing an event in Paris on the 11th and 12th of September of 2018. And on the 11th, it's more focused on building capacity across national coordinators on how to, as you will be advancing the process of monitoring at country level, how to address issues that you're facing, understanding things that weren't clear, and making sure that the process is smooth, simple, and it generates value add to your country, and the results can be used afterwards to really drive action and strengthen your role as an entity coordinating development cooperation in your country. In addition to those things, as I was mentioning, there are two tools of data for data collection. One is for you, which is the country Excel, and it's comprehensive. It serves to report your country data in total, including that coming from other development actors like development partners. This is a tool which is self-explanatory. It will be available in multiple languages. It's user-friendly, it's easy to navigate, it contains a help information across, as definitions are, when you see a concept that is difficult, they have a definition when you scroll your mouse over on top of it. We're trying to make it, learning from the past, making it as easy as possible to participate in this process. For example, one request that many countries said, it was like when they get data from the development partners, they would like to copy and paste in the tool. To avoid having to manually input information, we have designed the new tool ways that allows you to copy and paste information as values when you copy in Excel. So it facilitates quite a bit the transfer of information from this second tool that that is down there in the slide, which is this DP, Development Partner Excel, which will be equally a tool that collects information on those 4 indicators that need development partner information. So you just have to share that with your development partners, and it will contain all the information they need, and access to the guide, explanations on each indicator, why they are reporting on this, and self-calculations of the responses. You'll see also in the tool for your country that it contains at the end a profile, let's say a country dashboard, that as you input the information from the different development partners or from your country, you'll get the final scores automatically calculated. We're trying to avoid all the technicalities of last time. Although you also can understand, if you are interested, you can also access to a technical companion that will document that will be available in the website of the 2018 monitoring round to understand what are the calculations behind each indicator if you need to get into that level of technical details. But the data collection tool will be reporting for you the scores on the different indicators and how do you compare to the different averages. What else are we providing you to support this data collection process? First, as before, a permanent help desk, and the fact that we, the team supporting that, the OECD UNDP Joint Support Team is in different time zones, allows us to be quite available and fast in answering your questions as doubts emerge in this monitoring process. So feel free always to reach us out with any doubt, questions, clarifications, and we'll be happy to write you back, call you, or solve the issue in any other way. In addition to that, we thought it would be useful as a new contribution to have regular clinics or questions and answers webinars ideally every week during the process. So you can come into those clinics at different hours to allow for all countries to participate and have a discussion on issues you are facing and how to solve them. Also listening to other people's issues when they are more advanced in the process. Additional support in country has happened in the past. Besides this ongoing support, remote support that we provide from the Global Partnership Joint Support Team, you may want to consider reaching out to your partners because they are committed to offer support to the different participating countries. And for example, in the last monitoring round, about 30 countries benefited with different types of support. That include, for example, in-kind staff time from the development partner in helping the national coordinator, or they even provide funding for consultants or technical assistance, or in some cases they provide the logistics to have a multi-stakeholder dialogue, or in other cases they helped with the donor mobilization and coordination processes. That was also very useful to to have all the other donors engaged and also reporting data in a timely manner. Those are good practices, and we really encourage you to ask your key development partners whether they will be willing to support you in this role of carrying out the monitoring process, as they have committed to support this agenda in every country. My colleague Yuko discussed a little bit about the multi-stakeholder dialogues and how it supports this exercise. And just a quick recap, so it works ideally, and although it's not the necessary approach, through focal points. So for indicator 3, that deals with the quality of public-private dialogue with the government and the different private sector representatives. Ideally, focal points nominated or appointed or identified from the private sector and other social agents can participate in this dialogue, provide responses to the questionnaire on the quality of the public-private dialogue in the country, and just to identify how do we identify the strengths and weaknesses and move forward to more collaboration between the public sector and the private sector. Same for indicator 2 on the quality of, on the enabling environment and development effectiveness of civil society organizations. The network that is supporting the global partnership from civil society has actually been training 45 focal points in 45 different countries that they are going to be available, and they understand the methodology, they understand that it has to come to a constructive conversation with the government, try to improve things. So those information, those contact details will be available in case you consider them as possible focal point for this conversation on indicator 2. And finally, in closing this country level data collection process, another good practice is to organize some way to liaise with the different participants and partners to review the data and get their input, feedback, validation, and also thinking on what the results mean for the country and how can they collaborate into improving things, improving predictability of development cooperation, improving the alignment and support to national priorities, working all together in a more effective way, etc. So it's good to have this final review, validation workshop or meeting, or at least liaise with all of them regarding the findings. Once you are more comfortable with the data and you feel that it is complete enough and all the participants have inputted into the process, the next stage is this validation, final validation in November, December. We give 2 months to allow for the different timelines, but also to allow for space for inputs. Sometimes you will get development partners not answering on time, etc., or the information won't be comprehensive. This is a good opportunity as you share the information, the country Excel with us, to help for us to help you fill all those gaps and have the headquarters or the country level partners to really submit data which is accurate and comprehensive if they haven't done so, for example. That's a part of the benefit of this process at the end. And that's what we try to do, to make sure that you have as much information from as many partners as possible. What happens next when you have finalized the country-led process of the monitoring exercise? Well, first, those results are going to be useful for you as a participating government for a different channels that I'm going to mention in a minute, while we as OECD UNDP and support team aggregate all this information and analyze the results, and with your collaboration and liaison with you, we produce country profiles, country reports that can help you in disseminating the findings at country level, in informing the voluntary national reviews that are submitted to the high-level political forum on sustainable development, in all the SDG follow-up and reporting that happens at country level. As you mentioned, 3 SDGs are coming up from this monitoring process, so it's a good input for that process. And in many countries, it's your national office, statistics office, the one in charge, but you can input into the process with these new indicators, etc. In parallel, we also produce some global reporting. We are thinking in moving away maybe from a single very long report, but to something that can be useful for you in identifying how do you move the agenda and the different issues that you care about and are monitoring this monitoring process. This information that your results also inform the global agenda in other ways, like the Financing for Development Global Report, which informs the Financing for Development Forum. So issues that are identified in your country, in how development cooperation is delivered, are flagged there and are taken to the highest level for discussion on how to solve it, because it's necessary to really implement the 2030 agenda and the SDGs. Same for the SDG Global Report. The country's informations also are reflected, highlighted in the United Nations SDG Global Report, which is the basis for a discussion in the high-level political forum in 2018, which is a milestone in this process of the 2030 agenda. And in maybe on the margins or complementing the high-level political forum, the Global Partnership is also organizing a senior-level meeting where all countries will be invited to participate, also in July 2019. And in that context, we can go deeper into the issues of effectiveness that have been identified through this process and finding with the partner solutions to address them. So as you see, this country-led process really informs the global agenda in a very direct way and in multiple ways, as you can see in this graph. But when the global partnership was established, one clear idea was that regardless of the global dialogue and policy making at that level, the main value of the global partnership exercise is at the country level. It's in revealing all this information on how things are working in terms of the partnership with the different partners and development partners and actors at the domestic level, and in finding ways to work better together, be more effective together in how and introducing policy changes and strengthening existing coordination arrangements. So as I was mentioning at the beginning, your institution is empowered to play the role that it has mandated in a more effective manner. We listened to you last monitoring round, and many national coordinators raised the point of like that they will benefit from some kind of guidance, toolkits, ways to understand how they can use this information, the monitoring results, not just for the dialogue and discussion, but to take the agenda forward. And we're going to be preparing some toolkits and providing support for you to move from results of monitoring results to action with your partners. This will be available as the country reports also come up from the beginning of next year. And it's because we are not an exercise of monitoring for monitoring, but monitoring to really move this agenda forward, because it has been stuck for a while in some of the issues that are important for effective delivery of development cooperation. So just to finalize a quick recap, before we open up for a conversation discussion, I'm sure that many of you that have had experience in the past have things to share regarding what were the main challenges, and we can discuss how to address them in the process. And many others that are new to this process may also have some important questions to raise. So quick recap. So June, July, it has been the process in which you have appointed national coordinators, and development partners are appointing at least at headquarters level at this stage focal points, but they will move then to country level focal points. In August, October, country governments are leading this process at country level. They liaise with bilateral, multilateral partners and funds, private sector, civil society focal points, etc., and other actors are relevant. We are going to be supporting you through the process, the Global Partnership, OECD, UNDP Joint Support Team, and we are going to be launching the trainings and the online trainings and producing many more materials in multiple languages in the coming weeks. So you are really prepared by the time you kick off the monitoring run at country level. And finally, as the data start to come in and you have the country report, we're going to help you find ways to work to move this data from monitoring the results to action, and to improve the coordination arrangements and the collective action which is needed at country level. And in addition, all this information evidence is going to flow into this global dialogue and decision making happening in 2019. So all the documents, as I was saying, are going to be available in the next days or early August, depending on the type of product, and they will be available in that dedicated website, effectivecooperation.org 2018 monitoring. But also we are always available in the help desk at monitoring effectivecooperation.org. So that could be it regarding our presentation, and we want to open up now to everybody for conversation. So there are some raised hands, and I want to ask my colleagues in UDP side to be the ones controlling the process. Thank you.
Okay, so have you seen anybody raising hands?
No, not yet.
Okay, all right. So we have actually have taken some of the questions that are already been provided through the chat room, and so I will be responding to some of them, and then I will ask Alejandro to also respond. There was a couple of questions with regard to HQ focal point, the list of HQ focal points. Now, I think what we will try to do is to have that kind of list available, especially for those that you will need to liaise somehow with a non-resident partners. For those that have the country office, we will be encouraging the national coordinator to be liaising directly with the donor focal point at the country level, as well as those country office colleagues at the country level. But for those that require some data and reports that are from those partners that are not having any sort of a residence or country office, then we'll be able to sort of translate or coordinate, communicate in terms of the reporting requirements informations. Now, there was a question about the donor focal points. Whether it is actually the UNDP or UN that should play this role, or other partners that voluntarily to actually take up the role. Again, it really depends on the country context. If the existing development partner group that exists that already kind of point out naturally some of the role of the donor focal point be much better assumed by, for example, those that are providing a secretarial support to the development partners group, or those that are playing a co-lead role for the development partner coordination mechanisms and so on, perhaps that would be naturally sort of a better fit for those partners that are having already that kind of role in the country office at the country level to assume that donor focal point. I know that some of the countries might be actually looking at several focal points to which the national coordinator might liaise with. For example, if the World Bank might be playing much more role among the MDBs, then they might be playing that kind of focal point role, liaising with the other multi-development banks or the regional development banks and so on. So it is really up to the country context and the discussion that might happen with the national coordinators. Now, the materials for the Paris workshop, we will be making them also available online. And I think there was a question about much more information about the specific indicators, the ways in which the measurement approach happens, what are the kind of data that are required to monitor the indicators. That would be discussed tomorrow. At the same time, we will have the second webinars that will go much more in depth for each of the indicators that are going to be monitored through the country depth monitoring process. And I think there was a question about the tools to enhance the validation and the roles in which the statistical office might actually play the role for that. And then I think there was a question about the timing of some of the data and tools and materials to be made available. I think we hear a plea that availability of those informations and a tool as early as possible to enable the national coordinator to engage development partners and the stakeholders at the country level earlier on. As I said, the guidebook, which is the key sort of materials already being coordinators, and also I think that will be made actually uploaded onto our website very shortly. So you have that information to actually start the process. Now, in terms of the other tools and guides, that will come as it becomes available. But we're working around the clock to make them available to you as soon as possible. But I guess Alejandro, do you want to take some question around the tool for validations and other things that I might have missed?
Yes, maybe going from the beginning, there was a question. The question on the workshop in September. I think we are going to attempt to have it a web stream as well for those that cannot attend. And if that's not a possibility because of logistics, we'll have at least a recording of it, so it can be watched at any time afterwards. But it will be available on the country Excel, the spreadsheet Excel file. That is we're almost finalizing it. So by our plan is by next Wednesday to have it available for you in the website in English version, and a few days later it will be available in French and Spanish, and hopefully at some point also in Arabic as well if needed. There was also a question regarding, I guess I didn't get the question on the validation process. I guess it's at the end of the process, or
I think the question was posed on the beginning of your presentation. You covered already a part of it.
Okay.
So it's been answered.
Yeah, I think maybe there are other raised hands or conversations in the chat that we can respond.
Okay. I can come in. There was a question about the quality of data. How do we ensure the quality of data that are reported through the monitoring process? And there was also another question about, not a question, but much more about the comments in terms of the critical role of private sector engagement. And I think in terms of the quality of data, the ways in which to ensure and strengthen the quality, I think, Hendo, you might want to take on that.
Yeah.
And then I guess in terms of the private sector, we can actually go a little bit more deeper tomorrow when we are talking about the indicator 3 that looks at the public-private dialogue as a way to strengthen and providing a space and mechanisms to engage much more effectively the private sector contributions to the sustainable development agenda.
Yes, and the validation, how do you ensure that that was a challenge in the past? No, how you get the data from your development partners? How you ensure that's comprehensive and credible, and it really matches reality? No, and sometimes themselves we learn that they have this differentiated information at headquarters level, what they have in the country office, and they report. First of all, they are going to be requested to provide data which is synchronized with your own fiscal year. So it's important that they match that, and we're going to kind of like guide also in that direction to really match your fiscal year. But you'll see that in every explanation of how to calculate each indicator, there is also an explanation for you as national coordinator, as government, on hints and ways to validate that data for the different indicators. That's one part of it, of the process, but also will help you as you submit the data to us to identify the gaps, inconsistencies, errors in the way they have reported data to you. And also the headquarters level of those partners will check the data again and say, maybe the country office didn't report the comprehensive data. For example, a typical issue that happened last time is that the partner has a program in the country, but the country office didn't report it. And then all of this information became available to the national coordinator for consideration at the end of the process. But at least it came, so that increased the comprehensiveness of the data. So this is a complex process, so you always have the last say on the data reported, if you or not, but we are facilitating around it all the type of guidance and explanations and tips on how to ensure that it's credible for you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think just to also add on the validation quality of the data, one thing that from the lesson on last time was when we triangulate some of those quality validation with the HQ, we've encouraged at the end of the day, I think the data is to be generated in an own by country process, meaning that we don't normally overwrite the data from the data that might come from the HQ. So I think we are trying as much as possible to ensure that the agreements to the data that are reported are made with the national coordinator. I hear someone is trying to speak. No? Okay. So is anybody have any more questions?
Allô?
Yes,
Allô?
go ahead. Mhm.
Alors, excusez-moi, je vais devoir parler en français. Bonjour tout le monde, je suis des îles Comores. Nous avons suivi avec attention le séminaire, ça a été très important, malgré qu'on ne comprend pas très bien l'anglais. J'espère que la prochaine fois, la prochaine séance, vous allez prendre les dispositions nécessaires pour que tout le monde puisse suivre avec beaucoup d'attention. Il serait mieux que les francophones puissent bénéficier d'un service de traducteur. Donc, je remercie les intervenants. Nous avons essayé de faire un effort de comprendre un peu le contenu globalement, mais étant francophone, on n'a pas pu très bien suivre à 100% le séminaire. J'espère que celui programmé pour demain, vous allez prendre en considération cet aspect, trouver un traducteur pour les francophones. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. And I think we will make as early as possible the French translated version, but I think we will explore the ways in which that actually record this, a similar sort of sessions in Francophone. So we will definitely take your point. Apology for that. But tomorrow.
Hello. Yeah, hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out the date for the online training course.
Okay, Alejandro.
We'll, hi, Henry. We'll share with all of you, the dates very shortly. Probably will be in the second part of because we're preparing the materials and everything, but there'll be videos and other self-training materials early on, but for the online training, it won't be a date specifically because it'll be self-guided. So you'll go whenever you wanna take it, or and the time is convenient for you, and you'll be able to take it. But as soon as it becomes available, so we'll try to make it by module available as soon as possible. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I would like to actually emphasize that tomorrow's session at the same time, we will go much more deeper for each of the indicator, what are being measured, and then what are the kind of reports, the data that are being requested, and then the measurement approach to actually monitor those indicators. So we very much welcome, and I encourage you to take part in tomorrow's sessions. I see that there's questions. Okay, there's a question about whether the self-training videos are also going to be made available in Spanish.
Yes, the answer is yes as well. Those are
as in French.
Yeah. Yeah, these are the official languages of the global partnership.
Oui, juste un petit remarque pour les Français, pour les francophones, nous allons essayer, peut-être pas pour demain, mais nous allons essayer de faire aussi des présentations, des séances, des formations en français. Alors, vous allez recevoir les informations pour les prochaines séances en français.
Merci beaucoup, nous vous remercions. Merci infiniment.
Merci à vous.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, there was a question about whether the presentations and all the materials are going to be made available in different languages, such as Romanian. I'm sure that in the past we also had a question about whether it's going to be made available in Portuguese and all different languages. We are unfortunately constrained with the resource issues, and therefore we will not be able to actually make them available in all different languages. However, if you have a good sort of engagement and the support perhaps with your development partners, some of the partners might be able to actually help with the translations. I'm thinking, I'm just sort of looking back in terms of the UNDP PEEP, Mozambique that had actually helped translations of the materials in Portuguese the last time, which is not guaranteed that this time it's going to be available, but it all depends on the resources. But we will make ourselves to be able to have the materials translated in Spanish and French, and then also some other language as much as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to complement you on this issue, because it's important for your country level, for example, to discuss with your civil society or private sector. In the past, we also had experiences, as you could say, in Portuguese in Mozambique, and then we shared that version with all the other Portuguese-speaking countries. So please share any version translated by your development partners into local languages with us, so others benefit too. That's happened with Russian also and with Arabic. So good if you can share with us also any translation of any material. Thank you.
Okay, we see some. Okay, I guess we won't have any more questions for this round, but thank you so much for being available. For those that had joined us very early or very late, we will be having the second series of the webinar that goes into the detail of the monitoring indicators tomorrow, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. And so thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.